All righty. So, thanks again for being willing to do the interview.
No problem.
Yeah. So, how about if you start off by saying little bit about what your current job is, and then we'll do like a stroll through memory lane about what you your original career.
Sure, sure. Well, my current job is as a program manager for professional development and training at UNH, and it's brand new to me. I've only been in the role for a couple of weeks, and so my job is to schedule and uh, and promote the several programs in the department.
All right. And what would you say? And I know you did you just started, but what would you say are like the most common activities of that role?
There's a lot of communication because you have to organize the calendar with different instructors, coming up with ideas for programs, um, making sure that everything is aligned for a way in a way that participants can um, achieve a series of classes in a way that is going to work out for them over the course of a semester. Um, really, a little. I'm looking forward to some of the more creative pieces of sort of coming up with new ideas for programming.
All right. And later on, we'll talk about what your position was before your promotion. So, yeah, so you graduate from college, and then what do you start doing?
Um, After college, I graduated in a time when the job market was very poor, and so I did things like substitute teaching. I I wasn't really sure at that point that I was going to go into teaching, and I didn't study education in college, so it was I was a content area teacher when I became a teacher. Um,
What did you
so
study in college?
English when I
Oh,
became an
okay.
English teacher.
Okay.
So it
Okay.
was not a huge reach, but and a very common for people to go that route. But I didn't grow up always wanting to be a teacher. So something a little just sort of like fell into it. And I worked at in retail. I worked at the bank. I did a lot of different things like that. And then I did some time in a company where we had a where we they manufactured educational kits, and I started to think about teaching as a possibility for myself, and I ended up getting certified and going to become a teacher in my early 20s.
Interesting. I'm curious. So, with sort of variety of jobs that you had, any any thoughts that you can remember as far as like, oh, I don't like this or this part of the job is interesting. I wonder if I could go in a direction where I get to do more of that. So sort of like this works for me, this doesn't work for me.
Um, for teaching, I always really liked presenting, and I always really liked the relationship that I had with the students, where I was mentoring them and help and guiding them, and I that those were things that I always really enjoyed about the role, um, and sharing things that I thought were interesting and that I was passionate about. I do like many elements of teaching.
And actually, before we get to the TT, I was more curious about so working in a bank, working in retail, working at the manufacturing company, because I work with a fair amount of people in their 20s who have done a number of different jobs and like none of them they really enjoyed. And
Yeah.
so I'm curious if you can remember what that was like for you and if you had any clues with those jobs in terms of, boy, I definitely don't want to do work that has X or this, I do like this part of my job, and I'm good at it. Maybe I can morph my career into something that uses more of this skill.
I think that one of the things I didn't like about banking and about my previous office job was the grind and the lack of variety. And so that was something that kind of led me out into education, where your days are so different. And maybe I didn't really know all of the different options that were out there for as far as career paths. I didn't have um, that guidance when I was young to say, okay, what can I do with the things that I like to do? I really was a little bit lost.
It's so funny. I was just going to ask you, did you feel lost? And you said I was a little lost. And so, um, can you talk about how you sort of stumbled into teaching?
I had, I guess I had a relationship with other people that were teachers and, or that were becoming teachers. And, I was just, when you look at a background, you have a background in something that's just a big content area in education, English. It was like, what can I do with this? And um, I didn't feel like I had a lot of options at the time. I didn't really know what they were. And we were making these educational kits, and it just seemed like they were so fun, and that it would be more fun to be the person in the classroom using the kit than the person, designing the box.
I love that. And so that was sort of the launching point, like, okay, let's try this teaching profession.
Yeah. And I did feel like it was going to open up, I was going to have more time. I think that's a huge misconception in teaching is that you have all of this free time and you're going to get out early and have your summer off. And it's really, you pay for that time off by working all hours of the day until then. Um, so that was enticing to me.
Yeah, that's a great example of the difference between the idea of a job and the reality,
Yeah.
and why, boy, doing informational interviews is so important because the day to day is very different than the concept.
And really, if you could teach just one day a week in the high school, wow, it would be a great job. But doing that every day is very challenging.
Yeah, I'm curious. My guess is you're an introvert. Um, would that be true?
Yes.
Like if you did my experience, yeah. So I'm an introvert too, even though a lot of what I do is public speaking and et
Hmm.
cetera. And I know how worn out I get after a day seminar. I wonder, like, what was it like as a teacher pumping out that energy day after day?
Well, it was exhausting. That's a good way to describe it. Pumping out the energy. I think uh, maybe part of being an introvert is that you think about everything that you say and do before you do it, and that's time consuming. And the people who are more extroverted probably didn't. It may not have taken such a toll on them because they were able to, go up there and do that every day. And it just required so much planning for me and so much energy to be at a level where I felt comfortable performing in front of people day after day. I didn't just walk in and have this sort of, all right, what are we doing today? Sort of approach. I wanted to be that way, but I never was. And I always thought that it was going to get easier as I became more experienced and had more of a collection of things to do and all that. And it didn't get easier.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a interesting observation. And it's part of what I think about is like figuring out what sort of workplace ecosystem works for us. And part of that is how much people contact, how much interaction. And it's like I have friends who most of their day is spent in meetings, which would drive me insane. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I crave that alone time, but I do enjoy meetings, which where I don't feel the pressure to maybe run the meeting.
Yeah. And so it's sort of like to me, it's like the Goldilocks, like what's the right amount of, so like for me with I love the balance of doing one-on-one career coaching with the one-to-many of teaching
Hmm.
uh, or training, because yeah, that mix energizes me. Whereas if I just did one-on-one or just did training, that's not a good, ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when did you start thinking, and what was triggering you to think like, maybe it's time to not do this teaching profession anymore?
It was it was prior to the pandemic, actually, which was a contributing factor to me ultimately leaving, but it wasn't the reason that I left. I really did feel like I wasn't happy enough in the position, in the profession. I do still feel like teaching is a calling and vocation, and that some people are just really happy doing it, even if it's hard. And I just didn't feel that I had that, and I didn't feel like I was giving enough to my family at home, because I was spending so much time preparing and correcting and doing all of those other things. So I already knew that I wanted to do something different. And then my first look around was like, well, what can I do within the school system? What can I do that's connected? What can I be promoted to? And I saw those options and didn't want those either. So I mean, because I thought about the things that I would could potentially do, like administration, and it just wasn't quite, it wasn't what I wanted. And I was like, well, I've gone, and I do have this feeling like I ambled so far down this path, I didn't entirely want to start over again. Um, I was I was hesitant to start over again because I knew how much work it would be.
Yeah, can you talk more about that that process of starting over, or could I do a bit of a tweak? Or I imagine teaching to administration is more than a bit of a tweak, but stay within the field and do a big shift. Can you talk more about what went on in your head?
Um, I think, well, first of all, there are a lot of things that are attractive about teaching, as far as the things that as you spend more years in the profession that you gain. You gain seniority in all different sorts of ways. Your income is tied to it. So if you put a lot of time in, it's really hard you really do give up a lot. There's a retirement system. There's all these things to consider that are not even related to the job or your happiness, but are a big make it a big decision. And I really have always liked the people that I worked with, and so that was another thing that I didn't want to lose. Um, and then just the total fear of being like, wow, okay, well, I'm probably going to have to take a job with a pay cut. I'm probably going to have to take a job where I'm not, um, I might be below where I think I'm supposed to be in the pecking order of, you know, seniority. And those were the things that I was thinking about. And I
Yeah.
also that I didn't know what to do. And I looked out there and there were so many different options. I really didn't know what I would be good at.
And so how did you navigate that? How did you um, decide what you might be good at and like what to apply for versus what not?
Um, I was really just at the time I was so unhappy that I was reading job descriptions and saying, do I actually see myself doing this? And even not even thinking if I was qualified, just like, because I even thought maybe I'll go out and do something to become more qualified, like get some more education, things like that. Um, and so that was the process. I did read some books and do a few personality type of things. And so that was helpful for me just in that sort of soul searching part of it. And I don't even remember all the names of the different things that I did, but I made a lot of lists of my strengths and a lot of things about the environments that I didn't want to be in. So that
And
was
s-
part of it.
and and so as you started to get clear on it, do you remember how you translated, okay, these are my strengths, these are my skills, this is what I'll apply for?
hmm I kind of narrowed it down to that I had some good communication skills, and that I liked to help other people. And and I was like, well, I'm not going to go back and get in. go back to school for 8 years and become a psychologist. Like it's like, but what can I do where I'm kind of doing that, and where might somebody appreciate my background? And that's what led me to start applying to educational institutions. So, and I was really thinking about uh, admissions, counseling, things like that, as a place that would be a good fit for me.
Hmm. So
And
did you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I applied for jobs like that and didn't get noticed. I had a very hard time getting my resume to stand out for anything outside. I got lots of offers for other teaching jobs during that time because they're, they need people. And um, yeah, I it's hard when all of the lists on your resume are one job title, and then you're looking for something different, and you just get filtered out with everything being so electronic now.
Yeah. And um, that's where, like, one of the things we talk about in the field about a proactive job search is so important is, um, having conversations with people so they
Mhm.
get to see, kind of experience you
Yeah,
and like, oh wow, she really is cool. And let's give her a shot versus, yeah, trying to make it through the applicant tracking system.
right.
But at least you were doing sort of like that, what's called like the two-step approach, that you were thinking of staying in education, just doing something different.
Hmm.
But as you said, it didn't pan out. And so do you remember when you applied? So what was the original position at UNH you applied for?
It's a site coordinator for professional
Site
development.
coordinator.
So it's just basically hosting and staffing the workshops online and in person. Um, it's being sort of the point of contact for the participants, and also it kind of became a point of contact for instructors as well.
And do you remember your interview for the job, and if you got a lot of questions around, like, do you have the skills for this position? Like, hey, you were a teacher, or questions around, are you going to be happy? You're going to be overqualified, et cetera.
They didn't ask me if I was going to be if I was going to be happy or overqualified, but the questions were almost like answered themselves because they were so obviously, and when I was interviewing for that job, they were so obviously skills that I had, like I had just come out of teaching during online during the pandemic. So, are you comfortable on Zoom? Yeah. Like, do you think that you could, introduce a class? Yes. Like it was just very like, I felt like, I feel like I was a good candidate for the role, and I felt like I was going to be able to do it. I didn't go into it with any fears. Um, so it
Yeah,
went well. The interview went well.
cool. And speaking from personal experience, you rocked that position. Yeah, I was like,
Thank you.
yeah, just your like, you exude competence. Like, okay, she's got this. She's not gonna. I know I can count on Valerie to whatever it is, and also just real like customer centricity. Um, but yeah, so I'm sure they picked up on all of that.
Yeah, and that was something that even though it seems like to me, like of course my students are my customers, and they people did ask me questions about customer service, both in this job that I'm in, that I was that job, and the new one. Those were questions that came up, and it was like, well, yes, my customers are these people that rely on me every day, and their parents, and um, uh, it it sounds like I always feel like I'm trying to justify and stretch and force these connections, force people to see the connections, um, but they're to me they're plain as day there.
That's a great point. And one of the things that I always try to say hammer home is you got to connect the dots for the people who are interviewing you, because oftentimes people get very like have tunnel vision about their organization or their business in that role and think like you have to have experience in this particular position to be able to do it. And so to show how what you've done is a natural connection and enables you to do this. So that's great. Yeah, great that you're
Yeah.
conscious of doing that.
And I do think the customer service piece with just trying to make sure that I mean, the students are one thing, but the parents were also they've sent you the most important thing in their world, and they want to be communicated with, and they want to know that everything's going well. And if anything isn't going well, they want to know that you're going to handle it. And, that's a big part, huge part of the job.
Yeah, I can imagine being unflappable was pretty important in that in that role.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
now, what was it like, let's say, oh, for the first 3 to 6 months, going from being a seasoned teacher to a newbie in this whole new environment? What was that like?
I was I was so excited that kind of carried me through it, but it was weird to have so many questions um, and to feel like I had to be reaching. Everybody was really good about providing me with support, but feeling like I had to ask somebody for help a lot. And in and I hadn't been used to that in a long time.
And did it feel humbling? Did it feel anxiety producing? Like, what was that like?
Both. It was
Okay.
definitely, it was humbling, and but I had this mindset going in that I was like, it doesn't matter what role you are in a business, your role is there for a reason. It's important. You need to do a great job no matter what it is. And so that was just always my focus, was just to be like, do a really good job at this job and see where it takes me. Um, and not think about it as entry level or, you know, something that is, because there is a point in time where you're like, wow, I've been working for 20 years and I'm still interviewing for an entry level position. That part was humbling. And then
Hmm.
being in that role and being like, I'm the one who doesn't have the answers. But then you start to, gain confidence and have, I think I remember the first time somebody asked me a question and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I can answer this question for you. So,
I love it. That's great. And so, anything you want to share in terms of um, like the transition from that sort of, oh, I'm entry level again to I've got my feet under me. I'm ready to progress up, in the organization.
um, I think that was my goal from right off the bat, was that I was going to just, whenever an opportunity to take on to learn something new that might be maybe a stepping stone, um, I was eager to do those things and take it on. And if I found that I was, able to get everything that I needed to do done, and then I had this time, I asked for more things to do, and just tried to learn as much as I could so that I could know if I were to be promoted, that I would know what to do, that I would
Neat.
understand the way the organization works.
I love it. And so um, when this new position came available, anything you want to say about like what went through your mind in terms of, am I ready? I've made myself ready from being so proactive, et cetera. Like what went through your mind?
I felt ready to do the job. I felt like I knew enough about the department and what we do, and I felt pretty good about being able to do the job. didn't feel really good about being able to get the job, even though I did know that I was well liked and appreciated for what I was doing. I still felt like my competition for the role was going to be people who have this exact set of experience. Um, and I believe that that was my competition. I think that I don't think that I was a sure thing.
Interesting. So what a great example of if you have the personal qualities, the strengths, the skills, you're still in the running. You know,
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah. And I do think that I don't think that I could have come directly from my teaching job into the role that I'm in now. I don't think that I think I needed to have that time with the organization for them to see what I could do and get to know me.
I agree. Yeah. And what a great example again of that two-step process.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
And
I'm
it happened. I didn't know how long it would take. It happened, it was it was a full year, but it could have been, I didn't know if it was going to take 5 years.
yeah, so that big, you know, the uncertainty, the unknown.
Mhm.
Did you get any feedback on why you were chosen?
Um, the the feedback that I got was, um, just mainly that they knew me and knew that I could do it and had that experience with me where they felt confident in me. So that was and confidence and comfortable with me. And and that I had learned all of the systems and knew all the people and all these things that are actually very important to the role. Having some relationships already and knowing the how to use all the tools.
Cool. Oh, and speaking of used all the tools, um, were there a bunch of like software programs or apps that you had to get up to speed? And if so, what was that like?
They were, but they weren't that different from other things that I'd used in the past. Every company has some kind of database system that they use. Like you don't know how to use it when you start, but there's a level of intuitiveness to a lot of it where it's like, okay, I didn't use this, but I used this other thing when I was, and in teaching, we had to. It's been a long time since we hand wrote our grades into a rank book. Like there's a lot that goes on in a database now that teachers are comfortable with. So um, and yeah, just a few other things, a little bit of like website stuff that I hadn't done since uh, college. Where I was like, I don't even know if HTML is the word anymore. Like, and it's not. But there are things that I had this history with, but maybe I needed to be brought up to speed.
Gotcha. And again, I know you've only been in this new position for a few weeks, but um, what do you like most about it, or or what you anticipate really enjoying? So like different than your site coordinator role.
Um, the creative piece, I think, is for me what I'm going to enjoy. I love research. It's a big part of my background in English is in that area. And so I think problem solving and coming up with creative new ideas and helping to grow something and take something and grow it and make it better. That's something that I am looking forward to. Not that I had no opportunities to do that in my previous role, but there was a lot of that was more operational problem solving, general communication.
And so like you'll be able to come up with like new ideas for seminars, conference ideas, that sort of thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
That, that's interesting when you talked about the operational versus creative. Did you take your Clifton Strengths assessment by any chance?
I might, I don't
Might
think
have,
so.
might have been one of the many. Yeah,
Yeah.
because Um, it makes me think of that. And also, was Myers-Briggs one of the ones you took?
I did something with that, but and I don't remember my results. And I honestly think I might have even done it twice and gotten two different
Different
results.
ones. Okay. The reason why I ask is one of the things that's really fascinating to me is how um, different personalities and with different strength, uh, like combinations, thrive in an operations environment,
Mhm.
and others, it like is the death of them. It just drains them. And doing something like back when you said those early jobs that just felt like a grind for other
Mhm.
personalities, daily operations is a grind. There needs to be more novelty, the creative stuff that or enterprise that you talked about.
Yeah, and one thing I do like about operations though was that it there are always things that are changing, and the mishaps that happen are the challenges. And even when I was young and working retail, I liked going in at midnight and changing the floor over. You know, like those. I like to be doing things, and I like variety.
Oh, interesting. Cool. So looking back on your journey, um, for teachers who are thinking, it's time for me to do something other than teaching, what are some closing thoughts, recommendations, encouragement you have for them?
I think that if somebody's looking to leave teaching and try something else, I think it's first of all, it's very doable. You have to be able to identify your strengths and what it is that why you're leaving so that you don't wind up in another situation where you're unhappy. Um, I feel like teaching is always there too. Like it's hard to leave, but if you don't really, if you're not content, it's not something that you don't lose those skills. You don't lose that option in life because you leave teaching, unless you leave on terrible, terrible terms. But I think it's worth it to see what what else you have to offer.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
more
that's
lives
a
to
great.
live thing.
I'm sorry, what was that last thing?
The more lives to live thing.
Yeah. And so recognizing that's a really good point. It's not one of those you've burned the boats and there's no turning back. You can always go back if you change your mind.
Yeah, and I do feel like there was a period of time where I was like denouncing it, like not to people, but just sort of like I want to put that part of my life behind me, and I don't want to be thought of that way. And that's been impossible. I'm always a teacher. Someone's always going to ask me to read something they wrote. Um, it's just, but a lot of those things are good and um, appreciated. So,
I'm glad you mentioned that. And it makes me think of some of the things that you said before in terms of translating for interviewers your experience in school and skills to the position you're applying for. Can we do just a brief rundown of, I think this will be really helpful for teachers. So what are the skills that and experiences that you um, developed as a teacher that you apply in a non-teacher context? And actually, before you answer that, the other point you made, which is so important, is just because you going on to a new chapter doesn't mean all your work experience has been for naught or is
yeah,
irrelevant. It's like, no, that's a wealth of experience that you will always bring forward.
yeah.
So for that, teacher's like, well, I just taught fifth graders math or whatever. What are those skills and abilities that you see that really have helped you in this new chapter?
But there's just such a variety of them. I mean, there's the obvious ones like presenting, communication, um, teaching, instructing. There's project management. because there's just so many people that you're responsible for. And so taking up any kind of project that you're doing, be it planning your entire year, then planning those units, then planning the activities. There's just a ton of planning. And so organization and scheduling, and that's just something that you just do. You don't even think about what it is that you're doing. I do think project management is something that's worth sticking on the resume, honestly. And then data analysis, because you're getting these grades, you're getting this constant feedback. You're seeing this work that's produced, and then you have to go back and tailor everything and change it. And you're even, running reports and seeing how your whole class did and whether you need to change something for one group or another. Oh, wow.
Boy, and I love,
Management in general of people.
yeah, actually, just write that management.
Conflict resolution.
In spades, huh? Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. And also one of the things that you said in terms of like with the organizing, scheduling, etc., you just do it. You don't think about it. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I think for people in general, whether it's a skill they've developed or a strength that they have, is oftentimes it's easy to take it for granted because it's so natural for them. And it's like, well, everybody can do that. It's like, no, not everybody can. The fact that it is natural for you um, means it's a strength, or perhaps it's you've become so good at it, um, then you'll be able to bring it moving forward. I also, one of the things we talked about conflict management, I'm thinking client relations management, so, parents, you have to manage relationship with the kids, the parents, with administration, with, I imagine, outside agencies, if it's a special needs kid, et cetera. So lots of managing relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah. And all while the chaos of the school days is going
Oh,
yeah. And
yeah.
and then the pandemic, just throw that in there and just do it
Oh.
all online. Yeah, it's an experience,
Uh,
but it's not one that I like. I was unhappy, but I don't look back on it as something that I regret.
good, good. And so any closing thoughts, whether it's for teachers or anybody considering career change?
Um, I think a closing thought was that I think if you're trying to move up, that you kind of being able to recognize when when you don't need to ask somebody else for help, I think is something. Because I do think when you get comfortable in your role and you start having that, some autonomy and some where you make decisions for yourself, um, when that starts to happen in a new role, like recognize it, because then that's when other people gain confidence in you because they know you can kind of do it on your own.
So that being a good litmus test for it would be appropriate for me to go for a promotion.
Yeah.
Um,
And then
and
just follow your dreams. Like if we advise other people to do that all the time, and then you get to a certain rut in your career and you think your dreams are over and you have all of these limitations, and it, you don't really know what a little change might bring.
yeah, it, and do you feel that as far as like a much more aliveness now that you're experiencing something new?
I feel excited. Yeah.
Cool. And actually I keep going like one last thing, one last thing. But wait, there's more. Um, Anything you want to say about how you dealt with the fear of stepping into this whole new world? Yeah, I'll just keep it as simple as that.
I think I dealt with it by just saying, you can't be afraid of failure. You're going to make mistakes. I have typed many questions to other people and then click, backspace them out and being like, I already know the answer to this question. I need to just do it on my own and not check first. And there it's scary to assume the new responsibilities and
I love that. I think that's a cool place to stop. That's such a strong visual, like just backspace, backspace. I love that.
yeah.
Yeah. It's um yeah, what a great like practical practical practice
Mhm.
for like owning your knowledge and your expertise and your readiness.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview.
Yeah.
Just like the first one, it's jam-packed with info in a short amount of time.
Well, I hope it's helpful to somebody. I really do.
Oh, it will be. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye, David.